BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Alright, hello everybody. Today is Wednesday, time for the AMA, that's the Ask Me Anything. Welcome to the show. This is the day where I respond to your questions and comments, we go through them together, and we have a discussion. But before we begin, I would like to just drop a couple of announcements. The first is that I recently obtained my copy of The Last Days of August by Jon Ronson. This is covering the death of adult entertainer August Ames. I did one episode about her recently. Well, recently, it's actually been a year and a half. Yeah, but to some people that seems recent. But yeah, 18 months ago I did an episode on August Ames. And this is a book that I've been looking forward to. Because it's an Audible original, some sources are even describing it as an extended podcast. It's about 3 hours and 43 minutes long. And then when you think about that, is it like anytime you listen to a lengthy podcast, is that the same as reading an audiobook? Maybe yes, maybe no. But the one that I did on the suicide of August Ames, which came out last year in 2020, was a case where I read like 3 articles, and I was so just overwhelmed with ideas and emotion and ways to respond to them. I just immediately jumped to the recorder and did my response, and that is not a good way to do anything other than running your mouth on the internet. But I definitely have wanted to read this to actually get a stronger understanding of what happened in the last days of the life of August Ames. So that is one that I'll be discussing in a future Anything Goes segment. But if you would like to tune into this week's Anything Goes segment, I will be talking all about the book Bond of Secrecy, My Life with CIA Spy and Watergate Conspirator E. Howard Hunt, and it is written by St. John Hunt and has some info in there that has been included by Jesse Ventura. This book was provided to me by Playtime, so as you see, one of the listeners shared something for an Anything Goes segment on Friday, and if you have anything that you would like covered on the channel, whether it's about serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, or absolutely any other subject, anything is fair game on Fridays. So please look out for this book discussion as well as a future one on The Last Days of August by Jon Ronson. And now let's get into some of your questions and comments. A lot of people have been asking some really good questions. Let's start with one about the Zodiac Killer from Albert Forel, who says, "In your personal opinion, Ned, do you think the Zodiac was a criminal mastermind or just lucky to never get caught?" I thought about this for like 10 seconds and then I had to decide the Zodiac was lucky not to get caught. While I said in the most recent Zodiac Mondays episode that I thought the Zodiac had at least an IQ of 125, I think he was lucky not to get caught. If what we know about the Blue Rock Springs shooting on July 4th of 1969 is true, then the Zodiac was lucky because you have Officer Richard Hoffman patrolling the park 5 minutes, 10 minutes before the Blue Rock Springs shooting. If Richard Hoffman had been closer, then he would have been able to intercept the Zodiac. Or, well, I mean, I guess let's just get into it. This opens up another can of worms because people begin to draw suspicion upon Richard Hoffman for numerous reasons. It's not only because he's at Blue Rock Springs so close to the time of the shooting which saw the murder of Darlene Ferrin, but it's also because he's mentioned in Robert Graysmith's book as attending a party that was held at Darlene Ferrin's house. Officer Richard Hoffman was at the painting party. Now, number one, it appears that the painting party never happened, and this is something that comes to us from Dean Ferrin, the husband of the late Darlene Ferrin, saying that there was no painting party at all. This is just Robert Graysmith fudging the facts. This is Graysmith lying. And Drew Beeson said a very good word on his channel, the Drew Beeson, but he has a show called the Zodcast there, and he said, that's graysmithing. People just need to incorporate that into the English language. When someone is saying a sentence that is half true and half false, that is graysmithing. So, with Richard Hoffman, a lot of suspicion falls upon him, but when I did the episode about suspect ratings, I gave Richard Hoffman an 8 out of 10, meaning of likelihood of having, connection to the crimes, but I had to give the caveat, the condition, I had to give the preliminary warning that I do not think that Richard Hoffman was the Zodiac killer, just some greater involvement, because it appears that there is some type of shadowy connection to Darlene Ferrin, or it's a question mark. That's why I said shadowy. There's something that has been either created by Robert Graysmith as a blatant fabrication, or, let's look at the facts. Richard Hoffman is at the park where Darlene Ferrin was shot and killed just minutes before that happened. Was he turning a blind eye to something? Or some people expand upon this in what is known as the policeman thrill kill club theory. But no matter what, you have someone who, let's just take this at face value, you have someone who committed a murder minutes after a police officer left the park. So that guy was extremely lucky. Someone who commits the murder of Paul Stein on October 11th of 1969 and walks away from it, that person was lucky. Now, I'm going to say something that might be a little bit controversial, but let's get away from the policeman thrill kill club theory, and let's look at the Zodiac hoax theory. If indeed this is the Zodiac hoax theory, that one person was writing letters taking credit for murders that he didn't commit, I wouldn't call that person a mastermind. Instead, I would say that that person is someone who is showing an enormous amount of crime scene awareness, police investigation awareness, and there's a very high amount of intelligence going into the Zodiac hoax theory. But did that actually happen? Was there no Zodiac killer and there was just a letter writer? It's not the Zodiac killer hoax, it's the Zodiac co-conspirator mystery. So, that's just something that I would like to say in response to that. I'm not endorsing the hoax theory, being very clear about that. And on that note, I would like to say that I talked a lot about the hoax theory in the episode that came out recently on the True Crime Talk Radio segment that is going to be done on Tuesdays. In addition to the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday segments, I've also added a True Crime Talk Radio segment that will come out on Tuesdays, and for the next coming months, for the summer, there will be a deep dive segment into the disappearance of Donna Lass, which occurred in 1970. And a great way to follow along with all of these is by visiting LaunchPad 1. You can download the show for free, take it on the go anywhere and anyhow. And by download, I mean you can take the audio as a pure podcast available at LaunchPad 1, free downloads. Another great way to support the show is by visiting the Teespring page. All kinds of T-shirts are available now, almost all sizes and colors. BlackBoxOnlineRadio, as well as the wonderful Being Weird is Not a Crime. And that was actually an idea that was suggested by one of the listeners as well. Professor Stewart came up with the plan for that one. Big thank you to him. Now, to go back to one of the questions that has been shared here, Mr. Barlow also asked a very good Zodiac killer question when he said, is Zodiac more serial killer or terrorist? Also, I had to think for about 10 seconds with this one, and I had to decide that the Zodiac is definitely more of a terrorist. Things like the bus bomb letter, talking about planting a bomb, talking about attacking a school bus, and it's going to get the kiddies as they come bouncing off the bus. That is terrorism. And even back to the absolute first time that I heard about the Zodiac Killer, watching America's Most Wanted as a kid, what did John Walsh say? He terrorized the Bay Area. The Zodiac is definitely more about creating this image of terror and exporting it out to the public, as opposed to actually committing the crimes. The Zodiac murdered 5 people in the canonical crime. Some people think that it's many more. The Zodiac even claimed responsibility for 37 murders. So, I'm not sure what to make of that, because I am not convinced of any of the unconfirmed Zodiac incidents. I do not endorse any of the unconfirmed Zodiac incidents. Yeah, I said the murder of Sherry Jo Bates is an 8 out of 10, but it's not a 10 out of 10 like Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, the Lake Berryessa stabbing, and the Paul Stein murder. Those are 10s out of 10. Okay, I can accept that that's Zodiac activity. With the murder of Sherry Jo Bates that occurred in 1966, there's a high chance that it is, but I don't endorse it. I am not convinced of that, absolutely not, until I see some convincing proof otherwise, and that goes for all of the other crimes, whether it's the murder of Ray Davis, the Domingos Edwards murders in 1963, and so on. But on that note, I would like to share something that I was watching on the program Clarice. It comes out on CBS. I think they've done the season finale. It seemed like the season finale. Like, I was just watching some of the episodes last night, catching up with that one, and I get it on Paramount Plus. That's why I said the CBS thing, but I watch everything on demand these days. And I brought up a line from the show Clarice previously on some of these AMAs when I said that there was this quotation, "He's so cold, but he wants you to think that he's on fire." And granted, it's a fictional show talking about a fictional serial killer. I don't even think they were inspired by the Zodiac Killer for that. He's so cold, but he wants you to think that he's on fire. And I've said that one in the past, but I think the Zodiac was like that. Now here's something else that they shared on that show in one of the episodes that I was watching just last night. The fictional Clarice said, he wants to have an audience. He only comes to life when people are watching. Okay, that's something else to think about the Zodiac Killer with. And then finally, in that wonderful season finale, if it was indeed a season finale, I only said wonderful because I don't really know what that was. I mean, not just watch, episode 10, episode 10, 11, 12, 13. Maybe they'll do another one. But here's something that they shared on the show. He wants to recreate mythology. All of those things seem to be about the Zodiac Killer. And yeah, they're talking about some fictional serial killer, but the Zodiac is like that. Look no further than the 408 cipher. When I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and those whom I have killed will be my slaves. The Zodiac wants an audience. That's why he's writing in these taunts, whether it's the hoax theory, the multiple killers theory, the policeman serial kill club, or a single perpetrator. The Zodiac is operating that way. He wants an audience. Whoever's writing those letters wanted an audience, and not only writing letters, but creating ciphers and cryptograms and mailing them into newspapers, the taunting letters, addressing police officers by name even at time. This person truly comes to life when he is operating in front of people who will listen to him or people who will read his writings. And then, absolutely, the Zodiac is trying to recreate mythology. And this could be done not only with egocentrism, like I'm so full of myself that I'm practically a god of creation. Yeah, I'm sure someone is trying to act out these fantasies of importance, but also the person who is behind this is trying to perhaps cover up from some very bad childhood experiences. And they talk about this on Clarice as well, that okay, this person must have had some type of very bad relationship with their mother and their father, maybe even the loss of a sibling growing up, and they blame their parents for that. Okay, there's some reason why this person is lusting after power. And a lot of these things were mentioned in the most recent episode that I did for Zodiac Mondays, and I would like to get to that one because Colonel Reb said something about the profile that I had created. The Zodiac was probably heterosexual, but you reach age 30 without getting laid, he would probably take anything he could get. I mean, I don't believe the Zodiac Killer ever had a girlfriend in his teen years or his college years, like the ages of 18 to 22. He was in what the manosphere likes to call the sexual desert. So, I think that the Zodiac Killer was someone who was perhaps feeling that he was denied certain experiences, and then he created this persona as a way of getting revenge at society. And at a point where I am in agreement with Michael Cole, it started out as developing animosity toward heterosexual couples because he felt that he didn't get to have the experiences that they did. Animosity toward heterosexual couples, not homosexual, because some people look at the Zodiac Killer mystery in a different way. At Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, and Lake Berryessa, there's a man and a woman present, a heterosexual couple. No matter how well they knew each other, no matter if somebody had another girlfriend somewhere, sure, they did, but looking at them as heterosexual couples, and some people think that the Zodiac Killer was gay, and the reason why he targeted heterosexual couples is he was wrestling with his feelings of homosexuality, whether it's that Aphrodite theory that there is a female presence that is behind a lot of this, meaning that it's an internal presence, like a masculine side and a feminine side within one person, and this guy's battling his gay feelings, as well as he is also resenting heterosexual couples because they can live outwardly and have very public and open experiences, whereas he was unable to do so. So, I mean, it's definitely been talked about a lot. I mean, it's Paul Avery even interviewed a forensic psychiatrist who knows a lot more about the human brain and experiences than I do, but I still have to say that I think the Zodiac Killer was a heterosexual male. I don't believe that the Zodiac Killer was gay. Now, going on to a question that has come in on that True Crime Talk Radio episode that I did last Tuesday. It's called Zodiac Manson plus Dr. Phil Grande. Yeah, I mean, talking about Dr. Phil and Dr. Todd Grande, who runs a YouTube channel. And this comes to us from Earl Pipe, who says, why do people consider the fact that Charles Manson could have been MK Ultra mind-controlled by shadowy orgies and agencies such an unthinkable, outrageous concept, when the government's own prosecution narrative against Manson was that he had the assassins under his own complete mind control? Now, the reason why people view it as outrageous is they do not believe that a link has been established between Charles Manson and the CIA. They're going to say that Manson went to the free clinic at Haight-Ashbury and he saw the Dr. Jolly West, who then goes on to be the psychiatrist for Jack Ruby, who is heavily connected to MK Ultra. All right, so he crossed paths with somebody once. How does that mean that he was brainwashed into orchestrating the Tate LaBianca murders? Yes, they created this narrative that Charles Manson was a cult leader and that he put the plan into action. What is the established link? I mean, Brian Davis, the host of the Tate LaBianca radio program, did a whole episode on this talking about what is the significance of Tom O'Neill's chaos. All right, there is this narrative that has been established that Charles Manson is at the Spawn Ranch, Charles Manson is at the free clinic for the at Haight-Ashbury, and what is the unifying connection? The skeptics do not believe that that has been put into place. But no, don't misunderstand me. It's entirely possible that Manson was the result of MK Ultra. It's just, I don't think there's any proof that has been made available to the general public that the CIA was behind the Tate LaBianca murders, or they're doing experiments on people to see what happened, and then they're just documenting Manson through the media coverage, and it's all part of Operation Terrify America to destroy the hippie movement, because the hippie movement was becoming somewhat powerful, or it is somewhat uncontrollable. It's something that the global elites in the New World Order were unable to control. So what they did was they preyed on people's emotions. Firstly, in 1965, by introducing a very pro-Earth message, in short, trying to get people to die for the Earth so that they would decrease the surplus population, because the global elites, the oligarchs, they're absolutely obsessed with population control. Prince Philip talked about it all the time, even in the 1980s, saying that he wanted to die and be reborn as a deadly virus so that he could decrease the surplus population. He also had many comments about overpopulation as well. And this stems back to the 1700s with an Italian writer named Giovanni Gianmaria Ortes, who was all about the carrying capacity, thinking that the world could not support more than 3 billion people. Now, maybe Ortes actually believed that, but the global elites latch onto that because a smaller population can be easily controlled. Maybe you've heard something about the Georgia Guidestones that talks about decreasing the population to 500 million. And one way you do it is you get people to stop having children and promoting this idea that they need to not have children or they need to die for the earth because the earth cannot support a large number of people. And this expands upon the Atwa, thinking that air, trees, water, animals, or something like that. I'm not even the, I'm not a believer of that, as you can see very clearly, but people need to appreciate the air, the trees, the water, and the animals, and those things need to take precedent over human life, and it's a way of playing on people's emotions to get them to do certain things. And the climate change skeptics out there will simply tell you that global warming is a hoax that was created by the British Empire in 1965. Being clear, I also do not endorse that. I wanted to shout that from the rooftops, but other people have talked about that because in the 1960s they were very worried. By they, I mean the global elites, the oligarchs, the New World Order, and the British Empire, that these pro-movements of conscious awareness are going to be very detrimental to their power structure. So what they did was they took control of it. They played into it. They grabbed the bull by the horns, and they said something even more extreme. Now, how does this get to Charles Manson? Destroying the hippies, showing that the image of sex, drugs, and rock and roll was a bad thing. I mean, it's not, but they created this image that, oh, if you listen to rock and roll and you have sex and you do drugs, then you're going to end up like one of Manson's followers. You're going to be like Leslie Van Houten or Susan Atkins or Patricia Krenwinkel and spending the rest of your life in prison. And at the time, it was the death penalty. All of those people received the death penalty, and it wasn't until I just had the date, just drew a mental blank, was it 72 when they overturned the death penalty in California, and then that was, all the sentences were commuted to life in prison. Now, we have a comment that came to us from Kyle Hanna on the episode, The Domingos Edwards Murders, and Kyle Hanna says, we will never know if this was the Zodiac killer or not. The Domingos Edwards murders occurred near Gaviota Beach in Santa Barbara, California, or Gaviota State Park, on a beach nearby Santa Barbara, and this occurred on June 4th of 1963 that saw the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. They were murdered in the early afternoon on a senior skip day. So some people think that this was the Zodiac killer. Other people think that it was someone who had some mental instability issues but was a sexual predator who just saw a car that was parked along the side of the road, Highway 101 in California, and came down and attempted to sexually assault Linda Edwards, cutting her swimsuit with a knife. And we do not actually know where the swimsuit was cut because Linda Edwards was murdered, shot with a .22 caliber gun, and her body was dragged to a seaside shack, but she was dragged alongside her back. And some people think that maybe the perpetrator simply wanted to just expose her breasts so that he could look at them in somewhat of a perverted gesture, or it could even be possible that he contemplated sexually assaulting her post-mortem but did not, or maybe he wanted to humiliate her. All the possibilities have been stated because we do not know who committed the Gaviota shooting. And on to the next comment here. We have one that came in on an older episode called Billie-Jo Jenkins True Crime Q&A. I learned about the murder of Billie-Jo Jenkins from the Lord and Arts channel back in 2017, 2017 and 18. I was absolutely obsessed with Lord and Arts. John Lorden hosted, he used to host 5 shows and he moved it down to 3, and now it's just 2, but sometimes does a Wednesday episode. And on the Lord and Arts channel, he did an episode on the murder of Billie-Jo Jenkins from Hastings in the United Kingdom. Billie-Jo Jenkins was taken in by a foster family, and her foster father was named Sean Jenkins, Sean spelled S-I-O-N. No relation, though, just a coincidence. And it's a very, long, complicated story, but there was, a day when Billie-Jo Jenkins was supposed to be painting a patio door, and they went to go to the store, and Sean Jenkins got into the car with his other 2 daughters, and he drove around in a circle, kind of awkwardly, right? But also he said that he simply forgot his wallet or something like that. I don't want to get too bogged down on the details, but then he went back into the house where Billie-Jo was supposedly painting the patio door alone. He was in the house for 3 minutes, and then he comes back out, no signs of any struggle, there's no blood on his clothes, and in that 3-minute window, the prosecution argued that Billie-Jo Jenkins was murdered. Then Sean Jenkins drives away and just goes to the paint store with his other daughters, and when they come home, they find Billie-Jo has been murdered. And then one of the things the prosecution would use against Sean Jenkins is they had between 150 to 160 micro droplets of Billie-Jo's blood on his fleece, on the fleece shirt that he was wearing. And the defense later came up with the explanation that this actually happened because he found his foster daughter murdered. So he first grabbed her body and he picked her up a little bit. And they said that what those micro droplets were caused from is a post-mortem exhaling of a bloody mist. And one of the reasons why Sean Jenkins was also exonerated of this, he did go spend some time in jail, but he was exonerated because they said that if he had killed his foster daughter with blunt force trauma, then he would have had micro droplets of blood on both the front of his fleece and the backside, and they were only found on the front. But most people look at the timeline for this. You think some guy, okay, he stops at the house for 3 minutes. 3 minutes he would have had alone with her. He goes in and he goes out, and that he murdered his foster daughter, cleans up so there's no visible blood on his clothing, doesn't show any signs of committing a murder, and then drives to a hardware store or wherever they went. And the comment comes to us from Sweep Sings, who recently left us on the Billie-Jo Jenkins True Crime Q&A. I'm suspicious of the 3-minute window that comes from a daughter who was fairly young. It might have been 10 minutes for all we know. I think that is an absolutely brilliant observation because I have a 5-part series on Billie-Jo Jenkins here on this channel. It is done in the old-fashioned black box recordings, plus the Q&A that Sweep Sings was just commenting on. And that's a good point. Who's to say it actually was a 3-minute window? What if it was 10 minutes and the kids are in the car just kind of like daydreaming, spacing out, maybe even getting caught up in a little bit of conversation, and that Sean Jenkins actually did it? I mean, to this day, I cannot tell you that he actually committed the murder of Billie-Jo Jenkins or not. When I did that 5-part series, though, I began to think that, from the beginning, absolutely, he is guilty. He got away with murder. This guy is a very destructive individual. He needs to be back behind bars. But by the end of that 5-part series, I had a big reversal. And I decided that I actually began to think that he was innocent and that he is an unlikable personality. But what is my favorite saying? Being weird is not a crime. And I think a lot of the reasons why people do think that Sean Jenkins is even still guilty is because he appeared on a program that was hosted by Trevor McDonald, and he did a very public interview with the network, and it was broadcast nationwide, and he was acting very excited, and he's talking about the murder of his foster daughter, and he, as John Lorden said, he tries to put himself in line with the interviewer. He's like, oh yes, I was doing awkward things, exactly, of course I was driving around in a circle. I mean, people can forget their wallet, or people can drive around and then go back home and get something. Who hasn't done that? I just did that 2 weeks ago. I was driving to work and, oh crap, I left something in the house, so I drove back and I got it. It was a banana, mind you. I like eating bananas on my break time. But whatever. I mean, people do stuff like that. However, though, I certainly didn't have a foster daughter that ended up murdered, so people will look into someone's details. Now, we have one comment that came in about the Zodiac killer, and this was on an episode about Hal Snook and a handwriting sample. This was called Zodiac Hal Snook Handwriting Match, and was also requested by Gregory, who is one of the listeners. And Evan from Texas wrote into the channel saying, I can confirm that the writing on the Lake Berryessa police report is the hand of Hal Snook. I have examples of his handwriting that I used in my own videos. I think another commenter had a good suggestion that someone else may have filled in this particular form for him. Apparent, perhaps, interestingly, someone tried to claim on my channel that the Lake Berryessa police report was actually written by his assistant and had first-hand knowledge of this. When pressed about their first-hand knowledge and pointing out that it's the assistant who types the notes, not writes them. You can actually see the name of the assistant in the typed report. The comment mysteriously vanished. I'm being 100% clear. After the Lake Berryessa stabbing on September 27th of 1969, I believe the police report was written by Hal Snook, the one that is the strongest sample of his handwriting, and I think that was Hal Snook. I don't think that was any assistant, and Evan even provided a much more solid explanation. Hal Snook is the prime suspect in the Zodiac hoax theory for writing the letters, not committing the murders, but writing the letters. Once again, Zodiac hoax. Someone was writing letters for a murder spree that he did not commit. So I responded to Evan from Texas by saying, "Hi, Evan. To be clear, I 100% believe the Lake Berryessa police report was written by Hal Snook, but I would like to ask you something. The critics of the hoax theory often say that Hal Snook had motive, rhyme, or reason to write the letters." What did I say? Wow, I wrote a lousy comment. I really should be. The critics of the hoax theory do not say that Hal Snook had motive, rhyme, or reason to write the letters. Wow, I butchered that one. Lousy brain. A well-respected narcotics officer in his mid-40s, risking his career, livelihood, and reputation, all for a letter-writing hoax? Let's say Hal Snook did write the letters. Why? And, I need to rephrase that. The people who criticize the Zodiac hoax theory say that Hal Snook is a guy who would have been 44 years old in 1969. He had a career, he was a well-respected narcotics officer, and he was good at it too. The thing that Thomas Henry Horton always says in interviews is that Hal Snook was someone who could testify at a trial that this batch of meth was cooked in this laboratory by this motorcycle gang's meth cook. He was an expert in that. It sounds like he was a brilliant forensic scientist. And one of the things that I do disagree with Thomas Henry Horton is he presents Hal Snook as somewhat of a gifted underachiever, the kind of person who got demoted in the military because he was being too friendly with his subordinates and that he had a lot of resentment built up, but at the same time also says that he is an absolutely brilliant and gifted narcotics officer. And in the first video that was done by Evan from Texas, if you haven't watched his videos yet on the hoax theory, I highly recommend them. He talked about how Hal Snook received the highest decorated honor that a narcotics officer could receive in the state of California. He seems like someone who was very accomplished. Why would he risk everything for a hoax? Now, if someone had actually committed murders, okay, well, they committed murders, they wanted to cover it up. Look, there are lots of serial killers out there, but this is not the story of a serial killer. It is someone who is just writing in prank letters, more or less. Is it just a sick midlife crisis prank? I'm really not sure. And Hal Snook passed away in 2010, so he is not here to defend himself, but I thank Evan from Texas for listening to the channel all the same. We have a comment that came into us from Kelly Gable on the profiling episode, and Kelly Gable says, "Who was the Zodiac killer? Robert Ivan Nichols. That's who." I really need to do an episode on Robert Ivan Nichols in the future. A lot of people have requested one about him over the years, and Master Movie Critic, though, has one on the Ross Sullivan episode. It's actually the Ross Sullivan Q&A. And Master Movie Critic says, in the History Channel series, they talked about Ross Sullivan working in the library when Sherry Jo Bates was killed. Shortly after that, according to the series, he moved to the San Francisco area when the attacks happened. Now, did he actually do that? Did he actually move to San Francisco, or was it Santa Cruz when the attacks were happening? And when cab driver Paul Stein, they realized where the killer was picked up by the cab right after a showing of The Mikado had just finished, and the destination was very close to where Sullivan lived. In previous episodes, though, I've stated that Sullivan cannot be placed within 100 miles of any Zodiac crime. Even the names of the producers were something, and Sullivan. Oh yeah, Gilbert and Sullivan, some people have pointed that out. I'll give you that one. I'm just saying. I missed one line in the comment. We know Sullivan was in a play earlier in his life where he played the killer. I don't think that was a play. I think that was a short film. But I wish the History Channel would have gone more into depth about Sullivan. Absolutely, I do. I know what episodes you're talking about, and I was not a big fan of those. I think that, they were not the most impressive ones there. But anyway, Ross Sullivan is a suspect we've gone up and down about, and the long story short is I do not think that he was the Zodiac killer, and I would love to watch that short film that he appeared in. I have no idea whatever happened to it, but we shall see if it surfaces in the future. Okay, and moving on to the next comment here, we have one from Amanda Francis, who sent one in about UFOs, saying, on the subject of UFOs, the 1994 Trumbull County UFO, which is in Warren, Ohio, is another interesting one. There are 911 recordings with police officers and other residents witnessing something. Now, you guys will know that I am somewhat skeptical about any UFO encounter or any type of paranormal event. Like, if you're going to be talking about something like ghosts or anything like that, I'm very skeptical of those things as well. But with UFOs, unidentified flying objects, I look for one particular detail that is mentioned here in Amanda Francis's comment. There are 911 recordings with police officers and other residents witnessing something. What does this mean? That more than one person is experiencing the same thing. Because with so many of these UFO encounters, you often have to rely on the testimony of one person. Yes, of course, we have some things where there are videography devices that have recorded these things. They have the video images to back it up and saying, hey, look, here's an unidentified flying object. Yeah, but that's the exact same idea. More than one person can observe the situation. Because I have to tell you, it becomes quite difficult when someone is talking about anything, whether it's a ghost story or a UFO encounter or a Bigfoot sighting, and there is one single person who has observed it. Hey guys, you won't believe it, what I just saw. I just saw like this thing in the sky, and it was moving really fast, and yeah, that's all nice. But did multiple people see that? And if all these people are having the same experience, number one, that should tell you that there actually is something in the atmosphere that isn't supposed to be there, and number two, that it must have an origin of some point, and we're trying to find out where that is. Okay, I do have another comment here from Jim Peterson about the Zodiac killer, who says, I really believe there was more than one person that committed those crimes, at least 3 different killers. And I responded to Jim Peterson by saying, well, you know, I like to discuss that, but Jim, what kind of multiple killers theory do you support? Something like the Thrill Kill Club or something like the hoax theory? Now, I talked a lot about the multiple killers theory involving the Zodiac killer because it was kind of a gut instinct, if you will, that came to mind back in 2019. Once I began to learn more and more about it, I was like, it almost seems like we're dealing with the psychology of multiple people. Because there are all of these differences in the Zodiac crimes, whether it's sneaking up on some teenagers at a lover's lane to wearing a hooded mask and stabbing the victims with a knife instead of shooting them with a gun, or how about riding in the back of somebody's taxi cab and killing a taxi driver. There are all of these differences in the Zodiac crimes, and the Zodiac is not consistent. I can give you a very simple explanation about how the murders in 1968 and 69 were committed by one person. Well, he changed what he was doing. He didn't commit all the crimes in the same way to avoid getting caught, and that's why the Zodiac killer was never captured. Because he knew that if he had a pattern going, he would eventually get caught. Or, I mean, some people like Michael Butterfield like to theorize that it wasn't a series of sexually motivated crimes, like the way that some people target sex workers and or just luring women to a vulnerable place. It's not driven by a sexual urge, but rather by a cold, methodical, and calculating and response. But my response to someone like Jim Peterson is that if you're going to say that there are at least 3 killers, how did that happen? And I've looked at numerous explanations, because if you have a multiple killers theory with the Zodiac crimes from 68 and 69, then it opens up another, what? Can of worms. I was using that expression earlier. That's a real can of worms. Say, for example, let's say there were 3 killers, maybe 4 killers, then that committed those crimes. Well, how was it arranged? Who was involved? And you don't want to be the kind of person who's going to offer a solution to a murder mystery and not say who actually committed the murders. I mean, when I first imagined it, I mean, this whole thing about the multiple killers theory back in 2019, I was thinking that there was one letter writer maybe that person actually committed a crime, but I thought there were 4 killers. And it's not like I knew that 100%. If I didn't have a conscience, I would have written that into a tell-all book or something called The Group Murder Theory by me, Ned from West Virginia. No, but that would mean that I would be writing something that I wasn't sure of. And anyway, I mean, some people try and take advantage of true crime cases and conspiracy theories, but I couldn't do that, no. And especially for the fact that how on earth would I be able to compose that narrative, because you have a multiple killers arrangement? Well, is it this policeman thrill kill club that we were talking about? Is it what I had imagined about how some people had this group activity? I called it the group murder theory, that there were 4 different killers. Each person committed one of the crimes, and it was meant to occur within a 12-month cycle. I mean, sometime before December 20th of 1969, the murders were meant to conclude. Maybe the dates had significance, maybe they didn't. Maybe it's like, 6 months from each person's birthday, something like that. And then there is one central mind behind it. Some guy's the leading force, and he is also the person who's writing the letters. And it was just that, a thrill kill club, although I didn't have those words in my vocabulary at the time. But that wasn't anything like the policeman thrill kill club, which is saying that officers like Richard Hoffman just decided to turn on the law, and they betrayed their badge, and they used their power as police officers to commit a series of murders. Maybe you could arrange it in that way. Each of these cops is committing a crime. But, I mean, Richard Hoffman has never been charged with the murder of Darlene Ferrin. He isn't even a person of interest in that case. Let's be 100% crystal clear about that. No one has ever formally accused him of that. By formally, I mean like charges have not been brought forward, so it's really quite difficult to accuse him of such a thing. But the simplest variant of the group murder theory is a partnership. Just saying that there were 2 people. One person did the Lake Berryessa stabbing, and someone else did the other 3 confirmed canonical crimes. Now, the problem with that is, I mean, where is the evidence of a second person? I mean, Richard Grinnell did a very good video talking about how there could have been 2 shooters at Lake Herman Road. Okay, but that, well, where's the second person at Blue Rock Springs? Where's the second person at Lake Berryessa? Where's the second person at the Stein murder? Almost certainly there was only one person at the murder of Paul Stein. And from reading the book Zodiac Killer, Just the Facts, I can see very clearly that just one thing that I had heard previously from Tom Voigt, but is supported by the facts in the book Just the Facts, is that there's one set of footprints at Lake Berryessa to and from the picnic blanket while Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were attacked. Everything can be explained by one person. Where's the proof of any multiple killers arrangement? And I'm not saying that you're wrong, Jim. It's quite possible. I've been curious about it for ages. I don't know who the Zodiac Killer was or who was behind this. But I've said in several episodes that the 2 suspects that I thought very highly of were Don Chaney and Hal Snook. Don Chaney is mentioned in the book, Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer by Drew Beeson, and we've talked a lot about Hal Snook today. He is mentioned frequently by Thomas Henry Horn, who wrote the book The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, as well as the smaller series, The Great Zodiac Killer Hoax. It's done in small books that were put together into one big book called The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. I have book discussions on both of those, as well as episodes on Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer and Don Chaney. If anyone would like to follow along with that stuff, you hit the like button, subscribe, check out many different true crime cases and stories here on this channel. And even going to be talking about the CIA on the Anything Goes segment on Friday, not to mention the new segment that will be coming out on the disappearance of Donna Lass. So lots of things going on here on Black Box Online Radio. But the whole point is, the multiple killers theory is going to bring more questions than answers. When I say multiple killers, that is like the umbrella term, the all-encompassing term. The multiple killers theory. Then there's the group murder theory, which is, it's like an aspect of that. Were they multiple killers, but in an organized group? That's what I was thinking. That's like a thrill kill club, a partnership, or any arrangement where the people knew each other and they are interacting with each other. Now, here's one example of the multiple killers theory that is not a group murder. Lake Berryessa was a copycat. I don't think it was, but many people do. They think that the Zodiac killer committed the murders of David Faraday and Billie-Jo Jenkins, the murder of Darlene Ferrin, and the murder of Paul Stein, and that Lake Berryessa was committed by somebody who learned about it from the papers. And the reasons why this is entertained by people is, on August 4th of 1969, the Zodiac killer symbol was published in the Vallejo Times-Herald. Anybody could have learned about that. Anybody who had read that newspaper could have seen the symbol, put it on a costume, and attacked Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard. It could have been a thrill kill to see what you could get away with, blame it on somebody else. But the problem with that theory is, who on earth is going to look at the symbol in the paper after a guy has shot 3 people and say, okay, I'm going to commit a copycat crime, but I'm not going to shoot the victims. I'm going to stab them with a knife, which is something that the Zodiac hadn't done previously. That's a ridiculous way to commit a copycat crime. And what people always point out is the Zodiac killer put an enormous amount of effort into the costume at Lake Berryessa. And if you wanted to commit a copycat crime, you could just wear a ski mask, tie a bandana over your face. There are so many easier ways to do that. It appears that the costume at Lake Berryessa had significance to him. So that's another strike against the multiple killers theory, unless you are going at like the organized thrill kill club. But, many people have talked about that. They thought Lake Berryessa was a copycat crime, and that would mean that there were 2 killers in 1969. It's just there was not an organized group. That's why multiple killers theory is the big term. Then there's group murder theory, which covers things like the partnerships and the thrill kill clubs. But the hoax theory is actually another very good example of a multiple killers arrangement where there is no organized group. I mean, if one person is writing letters taking credit for crimes that he did not commit, the murderers are not connected. They don't have to know each other. And it's possible, when I say possible, in the hoax theory, Lake Herman Road could have been committed by David Walliot. With Blue Rock Springs, the suspects in that one have been either Jim Phillips Crabtree, the ex-husband of Darlene Ferrin, or Donald Warren Porter, a local criminal. And in the Stein murder, the suspect was Hesham Zayed for a while, although Hal Snook, the letter writer, has been accused of the murder of Paul Stein. And I previously heard, though, from Thomas Henry Horn that he was going to reveal new information about a suspect in the murder of Paul Stein, saying that he had cracked the case and he knows exactly who committed the Stein murder. But so far, that doesn't... If he has put that episode out, I missed it. I was watching The Stones Unturned this weekend, and he did a rather interesting episode on the Son of Sam case, talking about one of the major players in that story. Craig Glassman actually faked his own death. There is no death certificate on record for him. And that's kind of the entirety of what was revealed. He was mostly just dropping that as the bombshell and telling the story of how he obtained that information. But if anyone would like to follow that, you can go over to the Stones Unturned podcast. It may have been re-uploaded to the Professor Dad channel. The Son of Sam, though, there's a lot to learn there, and there's so many players involved. And that's one of the reasons why I think so many people turn toward the Manson family, the Tate LaBianca murders. Because, as I said in a previous episode, Brian Davis and Tana Laufenberg has said they've been following that for 15 years. The Tate LaBianca murders occurred over a period of 2 days. So, I think the reason why people are attracted to Charles Manson and the family is because there's so many different people to learn about, even outside of the Manson family, because then you have to find out who was Vincent Bugliosi, the prosecutor in that case, and author of the book Helter Skelter, which went on to be the best-selling true crime book of all time. Even though it's much like Zodiac from 1986, it's a pack of slimy lies. It's like that graysmithing stuff where some of it's true, some of it's false, but more or less, almost everyone accuses Bugliosi of blatantly lying. And the thesis of the Tate LaBianca radio program, if you ever like to listen to that, is that Vincent Bugliosi, they call him Bugs on the show, Bugs is more evil than Charles Manson, because he was a district attorney, he's supposed to be representing the people versus Charles Manson, and he lied. as well as committing a host of other crimes in his own personal life. I was tempted to do an episode once just simply called The Crimes of Vincent Bugliosi, just looking at those exact things, such as like beating up his mistress to the point where she had a miscarriage, harassing a man whom he thought had an affair with his wife, who was the milkman nonetheless. All of those things that he did that were illegal, but with the Manson trial, just blatantly falsifying the narrative, and every defendant is going to be framed by the prosecution, sure, but the fact that Bugliosi went on to write a book about it based on his own pack of slimy lies, that's an expression I learned from Henry Kissinger, by the way, ironically, and you can see that he is a fraud, but that's it, though. You have to learn about who these people are. And Brian Davis, the host of that program, said that with a true crime case, it takes about 4 years to find out who the people are. And I'm really glad he said that, because if you look at the Zodiac Killer mystery, for example, I think that he's talking about the names as well as the person's role. Like, it's not just, well, who was Robert Graysmith, or who was Arthur Lee Allen, or in the Manson family, who was Charles Manson, who was Vincent Bugliosi. When he says you have to learn who the people are, what is their agenda? Is this person a good person or a bad person? Are they telling the truth, or are they a liar? And you have to sift through their source material and find out, is this person good or evil? And with many a time, you find that people are self-serving, I think is the best way to address that. But somebody like Vincent Bugliosi, who was a prosecutor, did he have the right to be self-serving? After Bugliosi, well, I was about to say step down. I don't know if that's the fair word. The case was taken over completely by a different prosecutor named Stephen Kay. I'm sure if you followed anything about the Manson family trials, you've seen Stephen Kay before. He is the guy who attended all of the parole hearings for the Manson family members. And I was watching an interview, or was it the 2020 special, something about Leslie Van Houten and Patricia Krenwinkel. I think it was actually just a small interview segment with Patricia Krenwinkel, and they were going back and forth between Krenwinkel and Stephen Kay. And someone wrote in the comments section that Stephen Kay is such an awkward, squirrely, unlikable man, even if you agree with him. And the thing is, Stephen Kay is a horribly unlikable individual. Charles Manson even famously referred to him as Stephen Kay from his mother. But he brings up some solid points. And to show how these people can come into play, firstly, Tom O'Neill says he has completely debunked Stephen Kay's timeline and understanding of the Manson family case, even to the point where Stephen Kay just collapsed face into his hands saying, oh no, they got the timeline wrong, meaning that after the murders of Sharon Tate, and as well as her friends, and then the LaBianca murders in August of 1969, there were 3 additional meetings between Charles Manson and Terry Melcher, the record producer, who used to live at the house where Sharon Tate was. Of course, he didn't live there at the time, and that means that there's some ulterior agenda going on. It's not just that Charles Manson wants revenge against Terry Melcher. That could have been the biggest reason. I mean, it still could have, just because they had meetups, but it appears that Stephen Kay got the timeline wrong. And Stephen Kay is someone who is definitely on the side of punishment, and I was kind of glad that he said some of that in an interview, or in the interview that I was just citing, that the prison system is not about rehabilitation. If you look at many of the people who are included in the Manson family case, like Patricia Krenwinkel and Susan Atkins, who has passed away, they were perhaps all reformed. How about Bruce Davis, who is still alive? They've all definitely been rehabilitated to the point where they're not going to kill again. But Stephen Kay pointed out that the prison system is not about rehabilitation. It is about punishment. And Patricia Krenwinkel does herself absolutely no favors by just like, I need to be released because I'm a good person. Well, you're also a murderer, so many murderers spend their lives in prison. You're just very wimpy about it. I was discussing this with Chad, who is a big follower of not only Black Box Online Radio, but the Manson family. Chad was the first person to ever send me a photo of himself in a BBO War t-shirt, so if anyone else would like to do that, you're welcome to do so. BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. And he was talking about how, alright, some of these people need to be locked up forever, but Leslie Van Houten is one of the Manson family members that can be released because she's a harmless old woman now. Just let her see the ocean a few more times. And one point that Leslie Van Houten has always insisted is that she never actually participated in the fatal stabbing of anyone like Leno or Rosemary LaBianca. Leslie Van Houten was not at the Sharon Tate murders. She was there the next night at the LaBianca murders. That's all the deaths of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. And she said all of the stab wounds that she inflicted to Rosemary LaBianca were post-mortem. Well, I mean, granted, though, she should still be charged with murder if that were the case. I mean, if you're an active participant in any activity surrounding a murder, then you also get charged with murder. It just depends on the degree that first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and so on. But, I mean, she's already spent like 50-plus years in prison now, or maybe around 50 years, actually. So, she served her sentence. And as I just said, anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. I had a couple emails come in. Somebody actually requested 1 million Black Box Online Radio shirts. Some guy in Cameroon, I think his name is Olivier, but it's spelled Oliviet. Oliviet Bacheru. Good day, sir. May we use this opportunity to propose a contract order. 1 million pieces of T-shirts. These shirts would be used for direct and positive behavioral change among the youths of the country and region. It has been observed that youths wear T-shirts that have negative words and designs on which them to go affect their negative behaviors. This project is aimed at directly tackling that anomaly. And yeah, there's an order in for 1 million Black Box Online Radio shirts, T-shirts, over an 8-month period, to send them to the Douala seaport. And I will be paid by the bank T/T, and this is all coming to us from Douala, Cameroon. Part of me, just the smallest part of me, thinks that this is fake. On the other hand, how amazing would that be, to send 1 million Black Box Online Radio t-shirts to the children of Africa. Could you imagine people walking around with "being weird is not a crime" on the streets of Cameroon and so on? Hello, Yaoundé. But I'm not even going to respond to that. And the big reason is you don't have to buy the t-shirts through me. You get them through Teespring and such. I mean, if this guy wants to buy 1 million shirts, he can go ahead and just do it. What are you talking to me for? I mean, you're just messing around or something like that? Well, I know it's a scam. I'm fully aware. I have a couple episodes about West African scammers here on this channel. One is like a more overall discussion about Nigerian 419 scamming. That email was from Cameroon, not Nigeria, but it's really prevalent all across West Africa, whether it's Ghana or Togo, Benin more so than Togo, actually. Some have made it into Senegal. I read an article once that was talking about how a lot of Zimbabweans actually resorted to fleeing their country and moving into West Africa just to participate in the 419 scamming. 419 is, of course, from the Nigerian legal code. It's the code number for crimes associated with online scamming. That's why we call it that. But the other episode that I did was called "What is the Grandparent Scam?" It was back when I was doing that segment simply known as "What Is?" But there was another email that was talking about the Manson family, and this came to us from Jay Baldwin, who said, "Hi Ned, long-time listener to your YouTube channel. From London, UK. Hey, across the pond. If you want the truth about Charles Manson, I would refer you to a book about him called Now's the Only Thing That's Real by the author Neil Sanders. His website is neilsandersmindcontrol.com. Or find his talks on YouTube. Some sites are as follows: Truth Be Told Radio, The Real Charles Manson Story. Another channel is Sage of K Radio. Neil Sanders, Real Charles Manson Story. Hope this is helpful to you. The book is big, but it covers the murders and basically says that he was just a pimp, his history with the Beach Boys, and how the court trials of the murders were flawed and not how it happened. I mean, going through the Tate LaBianca radio program, I can already agree with several things that show that not only did the prosecution get the timeline wrong, not talking about Stephen K., but about Vincent Bugliosi, that they blatantly lied about the timeline, all of these misrepresentations. But this is something that has been widely discussed about Charles Manson, that he had access to all of these women. If he's this, whether you want to call him a hippie cult leader, a guru, and he's not a hippie, he's a slippy, slipping under the cover of being a hippie, but he had access to these women that we just talked about. Leslie Van Houten, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Tex Watson even talked about this in his book, Will You Die For Me?, when he was saying that they would interact with biker gangs and Charlie would offer the women to the biker gangs. Well, what is he doing it all for free? According to this email here, as well as many other sources, thank you, Jay, for this, Charles Manson was a pimp. He would pimp out the girls. And he may have been involved in pornography, because pornography was mostly illegal and taboo at the time. If you'd like to hear more about the older pornographic industries, I highly recommend the podcast Once Upon a Time in the Valley, which talks about even in the 1980s they had to do some things like behind closed doors and it could not be widely distributed. Hello, Internet. Thank you for Internet. It's why the Internet was born, for porn. So, I think you can get where that's going. But, yeah, one more time, I think I mumbled on the title a little. Now's the Only Thing That's Real by Neil Sanders is what Jay has recommended. And I do have a big reading list coming up, but also for the Anything Goes segments, it's really hard to just do one a week because there's a new Jay Sebring documentary out that's going to be talking all about him. Jay Sebring, of course, was one of the victims at the Sharon Tate murders. They call them that because she was the most famous victim, but of course we saw the murders of Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, Wojtek Frykowski, and Jay Sebring, and Stephen Parent. And during that True Crime Talk radio segment, we were talking about that yesterday, about how Stephen Parent was shot inside his own car, shot from someone who was sitting in the back seat. An alternative theory that maybe doesn't hold too much water. Anyway, thank you for listening to this episode here, this AMA for Wednesday. And one more time, you can hit that like button, subscribe, as well as going back and listening to some old Black Box Online Radio recordings, whether it's some of the Zodiac killer stuff or the ones about Nigerian 419 scamming and the grandparents scam. That one is really weird, mind you. I mean, it's a really different thing out there. And please look out for some new deep dive podcast segments and the Anything Goes segment on Friday. This show is available for free download at LaunchPad 1. You can download the audio of this version. The audio of this show is a podcast version. That was a hard sentence to say. And then the Teespring page. I mean, if there are anything left after this guy Oliviet from Cameroon bought all 1 million of them, if there are any shirts left, I would invite you to purchase one. I'm just still imagining that all the little kids running up and down playing soccer on the streets of Africa with BBOR across their chests. Anyway, I'll see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.